Today we're going to walk through how to build an assessment in the Welkin Designer. Right now in our care portal we have a number of assessments that are built out, but let's say we need to add another assessment. The first thing we need to do is write up what the questions are going to be, in addition to the answers that will correspond with each question. I've also added some scoring here because we're going to make this a scored assessment. We'll do a very simple example here with just 4 questions and answers, each with a yes and no option. Moving over into Designer, the first step we need to take is shift into Create Draft mode. We'll go back to the main page and click Create Draft. If we don't do this, we won't be able to make any changes to our setup. As soon as the draft is created, we'll navigate over to Data Types and create a new data type. Now in this case, we're going to create a set of data for all of the questions from our new questionnaire. I'm just going to give it a name that's relevant to the assessment that we're building, and then we'll create each different data field based on the 4 questions. We'll give each of them a name, and then we'll populate each one of these with the list answers. In this case, most of them are yes/no questions. We'll go ahead and do that for each of these other variables as well. Once you've completed all your data types, go ahead and save your changes. The next thing we're going to do is move down to the actual form creation. Click on Forms and then Create Form. Here you're going to give a name to your form, and then we're going to go ahead and build the questions that are going to be used to collect this information. You have the option of breaking your form into sections, but you don't have to. I prefer to not use a section if it's just a short form like this one. Here I'm going to go ahead and do a read-only field for the beginning to provide some instructions. And then what we'll do is we'll put in each different subsequent question to collect the information. After I complete each question, I'm going to click on Add Field to get another question ready. Now because I already have written out what my questions from the assessment are going to be, I'm just going to copy and paste that text directly into the system. Then I'm going to choose the CDT where we have this information stored, and then which particular field this answer is going to apply to. We'll go ahead and do that for each of the subsequent questions as well. Now that we've built all the questions and the associated answer fields, you can take a look at each of these if you'd like by opening them via the down arrow. The next step that we'd like to do though is get our scoring group set together. There's a couple other options here for doing conditionality or associating this with a program, but we're just going to click Add Group under the Scoring Group section. We'll give our scoring group a name, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at each one of the individual questions, and in our case, sum up the answers. We'll select a question from the drop-down corresponding with our associated question on the left-hand side, and then we'll change the score that we want for each of these questions. If you'll remember, in our original write-up of this assessment, we had developed scores associated with each different answer, so I'm just entering those in right now. Now that we've associated a score with each of our answers, we'll save changes. We've got a data type and a form, but let's go ahead and build a chart to show this information as it's collected. We'll click on Charts and Graphs and then Create Chart to begin. First step here is to give our chart a name. After selecting a name, let's determine how many days of information we want to display in the chart. We'll choose whether we want this to be a small or a large chart in our visuals. Next, which data are we wanting to display on the chart? And then, is this being created or updated when we display it? Finally, which item from that data set in the CDT is on display? At this point, we'll leave it as a line graph. And then for our purposes, we're going to give it a minimum value for the y-axis and a maximum for the y as well, just to make it an easier to visualize chart. Next thing we need to do is determine how we want this information to show on one of our layouts. We've built that chart, but we need to display it somewhere. In my case, we'll choose patient summary, and then we'll look this chart up by name, add it to our list, and drop it into place. Go ahead and save those changes. The final step that you need to do, having built all of these different items that we looked at so far, is add those to the security policies. In this build out, I have two different security policies, and I need to start by adding an internal data type for the scoring calculation that was completed. I'll add a regular data type for our data set that we built, and then we also built a form. We'll now navigate to the top menus under each of these categories. You can choose to scroll down and individually select fields that you want to enable or disable, but it's often easier to just double-click the box at the top to add everything. We've done internal CDT to start. Now we can do the same thing for the actual CDT grouping. And finally, for the form itself. We'll go ahead and make this same change to the other security policy just in case. Our final step to move this assessment into the live environment is to go ahead and review the changes and then publish to live. We've clicked on publish, and now we can navigate over to the care portal, where first of all, we'll notice that that patient summary now has the housing score chart. And then if we look back at our assessments and create a new assessment, we can see our housing security form. There's our 4 questions, in addition to the short description above. We'll make some answers to try it out. Go ahead and save those, and jump back to that patient summary to see there's our score. Giving it a simple click will show the answers to the different questions. Hopefully this helped you build your first assessment.